This PC build for 2024 has been just quite amazing. If that answers your question, I'm glad, because I can tell you with confidence the 9800X3D is 100% worth the build. Now, if you want to know all the information why, you want to know temperatures, you want to know benchmarks, I will share that with you because I have all different types of information that I can't wait to share with all of you. If you're not familiar with who I am Chris Mizo, and this channel is based on PCs and tech. Make sure you also go down below to give yourself a chance to win the $50 Visa gift card, because I will pick one winner in the middle of January. I believe it's January 15th of 2025. I wanted to give a gift that could be more universal, something that I can give that's worldwide. If you're interested in any of the parts I show, that's also in the description box as well. If you want to skip to certain areas of this video, you're more than welcome to go to the timestamps. If you are here to listen about everything that I have to say, which I do have a lot to say about every component that I've built this PC with. First and foremost, I've used Corsair's new 6500 case. It's been a great case. It's beautiful. It's not that over smoked glass that you get from the 5000X. This 6500X has been quite wonderful, especially I love the flexibility of just popping open the case without removing the screw holes. It just gives you a lot more flexibility to access your system if you need to make any type of adjustments. I had to make a couple with it because I had to move around some fan wires because I didn't like the location of it, and certain areas where the cooler, where the magnetized side of it was not in the right area, so I had to relocate it to the left side of the radiator in order for the RGBs to be working correctly. The fans would work, but the RGBs weren't kicking on, and that's what was the case. But anyway, very useful with all the USB-A options up on the top and one USB-C. Again, when it comes to manufacturers, I really hope soon that they manufacture dual USB-C ports, because it seems that is the more common option now. It's very soon, especially I could see it in 2025 being it more and more common. Now, the motherboard, you may be familiar, and I've talked about it for several weeks. ASUS ROG X870e Crosshair Hero. It's been amazing. I have no real disputes about it, and about that motherboard, I gotta say, I've heard a couple things that people said about different issues that they've ran into. Now, the first and foremost about this motherboard, I have not experienced any BIOS freezing issues, no instability issues. Now, make sure, for those who do purchase a motherboard, please make sure that the memory that you do select for the motherboard is QVL certified and matches up on the motherboard. I know that it's very tempting to get something that says 8000 megahertz and 8000 megahertz of RAM. Really, you want to look for the sweet spot of 6000 megahertz. So even if you get 8000 megahertz, you're going to want to downclick anyway, because you have to get into AMD's Infinity Fabric. That's the whole point of it. But anyway, make sure to get the correct RAM. It will not give you issues if you do have the correct RAM with the motherboard. It will not give you any instability issues. I have not experienced it quite yet, and if I did, I would 100% tell you, because as I mentioned, I ran into issues before with other motherboards, but I have not run into any issues with ASUS's X870e Crosshair Hero. And the other thing that people have been noticing and complaining about is the split of power when it comes to the PCIe X16 lane, which is usually where your GPU would sit, and they're complaining that it turns into X8. Now, the only way it turns into X8 is if you use M.2/2 and M.2/3. Those are the two locations where you shouldn't put an M2 drive if you do plan to use graphical power or for gaming. This motherboard gives you plenty of selection when it comes to using NVMe. It gives you up to 5 different slots in order for you to use NVMe. Just don't use 2 and 3 if you plan to use a graphics card. Just focus on the 3. Use M.2/1. you can use that. In _4, _5, those slots are perfectly fine to use. Now, again, it's not because it's ASUS's X870E. You will also run into the same issue. Doesn't matter who the manufacturer is. AMD's processor, it's limited to X24 of PCI Express 5, so do not expect to get magic out of a motherboard, and do not expect to use all the M2 dot slots on a motherboard if you do plan to use a build. The GPU works perfectly fine, and if you want to make sure that it is also running on X16, you can go into the BIOS and make sure that it is directly selected under X16, and you can actually shut off M.2, _2 and _3 in order for it to run at that full X16 speed, especially if you're worried about any type of power draw from it. But the motherboard has been great. I've even done some overclocking on it, and it's been phenomenal. Now, when it comes to the AIO, ASUS's Ryujin 3, I do have to say one thing about it. Now, with the Ryujin 3, when you first turn it on, you're going to hear the pump just kick on, and you're going to hear that mini fan, and it's going to sound like it's going to be pretty annoying at first, because I'll tell you why. The first thing you got to do is you have to update the Ryujin 3. As soon as you do, ASUS's smart fans will be programmed into it, and it will just get silent. So at first, I was going to be pretty disappointed about the noise, but then as soon as I've updated it, it completely went away, and the intelligent fans kicked on, and you can even adjust it if you need to. Most of the time when you first plug it in, it's going to go at a full 100%, so it's going to automatically assume that's the setting. The default setting is what you want, but I haven't had any issues with the cooler, and it's definitely kept the 9800X3D nice and cool. Now, most importantly, the processor that everybody cares about, the 9800X3D. Wow, AMD, you did really excellent with this. You have a base clock of 4.7 gigahertz. You have a boost clock of 5.2 gigahertz. You have L3 cache that goes up to 96 megabytes. It's just a monster. On top of it, you have 120 watts of TDP, and you get PBO2, which is precision boost overdrive, which is really nice. You have so many numbers that you can really play with this processor. You can have a lot of fun with it, especially if you're looking to get the best tune out of your motherboard and your processor. So it definitely matters on the type of motherboard that you get. ASUS thankfully provided us with this motherboard to be able to show you guys how great the 9800X3D really is. Now, the RAM that I chose, it isn't the greatest RAM. Now, I picked a G.Skill's 48 gigabytes because that was the fastest one I could get in. 48 gigabytes, which is CL32, but I did downclock it to 6000 megahertz. Now, on Expo I. Now, I did this only when I overclocked the CPU, which I will get into a little bit later when I pull up those benchmark numbers for you guys. But it definitely was able to handle it, and it still gave me impressive numbers. Let alone, I can't wait to test out how the 6000 megahertz of RAM that I'm waiting on, that's still to come in, which should be coming in, I believe, next Tuesday. It's going to be CL30, and I'm sure I can pull even better numbers out of it because the latency is a little bit lower, and you can expect better frames because of that. The fans, the Corsair fans, have been very quiet, not noisy at all. I haven't noticed it, and this is going to be funny. I got Corsair fans, but I have not bothered putting iCUE on it for obvious reasons. I want to pull the best numbers. iCUE has quite the reputation right now that they really need to fix. And I personally do not feel like messing with iCUE because I can put it into the system and I can get you those numbers. If you do care, make sure you put it down in the comments down below. I will definitely do it for you guys. But I have iCUE not installed. I don't have Armory Crate installed, but I do just have the basis of drivers installed on the PC rig to pull the best benchmark numbers as possible. The only thing that's installed are drivers and Steam games, and that's it. The graphics card that I'm using is Gigabyte RTX 4090 overclock. That has been a beast. Been using it for couple years now and it has not slowed down. I haven't even bothered overclocking it to make sure I can get better quality numbers for the long-term period. The power supply that I am using is MSI's new ATX 3.1 AG1000. It's been great. It's been quiet, not noisy at all. You don't even notice that it's there. And the SSD, most importantly, that I'm using is Gigabyte's 10,000 megabytes per second. It's really quite the beast for the numbers. Has not slowed down. It's definitely cooled off a lot actually with this newer motherboard because of the way the heatsink is. I didn't bother putting on their heatsink. I'd rather just use the Quick Connect, which is a awesome feature that the ASUS ROG X870e Crosshair Hero really does have, and it's on a few of their other motherboards. But anyway, I know what you're really here for. You're really here to really see the numbers, the benchmarks that I really pull out of this machine. Now, the first numbers I will show you here are between the 7950X3D, more of a newer driver that I've installed, and it's the older driver for this reason, because I didn't want iCUE to interfere with the program. So, because if you install NVIDIA's newer driver with iCUE, it's going to give you issues currently. Again, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to mess with iCUE. But anyway, you can see that I pulled out of Firestrike and Firestrike Ultra. More importantly, Ultra, I got about 23,863. And then you take a look at these Blender numbers here, which are quite impressive. Again, it's a 7950X3D. You can't expect anything less out of it. These are very CPU-centric numbers. And then you have PC Mark, which gave me about 9,127. And this is all just standard PBO settings with 6,000 megahertz of RAM with CL30 RAM. Most importantly, I have to throw that out there because I am matching it up against CL32 RAM. So that way you can just get an idea of how much the 9800X3D, how much of a beast it really is. And with Tomb Raider, I'm getting about 201 frames per second out of the 7950X3D. Cyberpunk getting 83.63, 159 out of Hitman. If you compare it to the 9800X3D with the standard Expo settings at 6400 megahertz, not even in the Infinity Fabric numbers here, it pulls about 24,005 compared to the 7950X3D. Take a look at those two compared to each other. You look at the monster numbers, you look at the Blender numbers, they're obviously going to be quite different, and same thing with Cinebench for obvious reasons. They're not going to match up well against each other because, again, one has more processors. You have 8 cores and 16 threads going up against something that's 16 cores and 32 threads. They're obviously going to be quite the stretch and different in numbers. Now, most importantly, what you're really here for is the whole game side. Now, the game side, I got about 197 frames per second. That's only a 5 frame difference between the two. 108 compared to 83. So you got nearly a 30 frames per second jump. And this is all overdrive mode. Now, the Black Ops 6. Now, that's a whole thing I will explain later. Just pay attention to that. It's originally I pulled about 159 frames per second on the Black Ops. I got 110 frames out of the 9800X3D. Now the Metro Exodus, I got 100.43. I got 92.54. The 9800X3D basically outmatches it in Final Fantasy, in GTA 5. Black Myth Wukong is pretty locked at that 119 frames per second. Now take a look at Expo 2 settings here. Compared it with Firestrike Ultra, you can see the difference, quite the difference between Expo 1 settings here, which was 24,000 originally. The difference between Expo 1 and Expo 2, Expo 1 is more refined for ASUS's tuning. Expo 2 is the basic Expo tuning that you purchase with the RAMs and strictly focused on those timing numbers. So Expo 1 could potentially give you better numbers compared to Expo 2. And again, this is at 6400 megahertz at CL32. So these are numbers that are not even entering the Infinity Fabric and not taking advantage of the processor just quite yet. I didn't bother with the CPU eccentric numbers because that's not going to matter as much. But I did do Cinebench at least so you can have quite the idea difference. Cinebench, I pulled a little bit of a better number compared to the Expo 1 settings. Now Tomb Raider reached about the same 196. But get this, Cyberpunk even pulled better numbers here. Cyberpunk pulled up to 125 frames per second. So nearly, you went from 80 frames per second to all the way from 125 frames per second. That's quite the jump. About a 44 frame per second jump from the 7950X3D. On top of it, and that's on CL32 RAM. That's not even entering the Infinity Fabric. But anyway, Black Ops 6 once again hits 110. It's not funny, 110 frames per second. Now you have Metro Exodus, which hits 105.13. So it does really well with Expo 2. Same thing with Hitman. It gets up to 159.44. Final Fantasy has some decent numbers, but again, not as good as Expo 1. Now, most importantly, those who really want some really great information and numbers, you got to check out these settings. Now, I'll tell you the settings that I did change. Now, I did underclock the RAM this time to 6000 megahertz. And now I even went to PBO mode. I turned that on. I enabled it. And I've also went to change out the scaler to X10. I also gave it some negative voltage all the way up to -30 to pull the best numbers. You can see how much of an improvement you can get from Firestrike Ultra. It's 23,999. Now you get Steel Nomad, which gets 9,035. On top of it, take a look at the PC Mark. It pulls even better now. It even beats out the 7950X3D. On top of it, the Cinebench numbers nearly dramatically go up. Also, I overclocked it to 200 megahertz. Tomb Raider hits 197, not much of a jump. Again, it's more than likely limited by the RAM there. And Cyberpunk 2077, I got it to hit 126.24. Call of Duty, once again, for some reason, locked on 110, which I will explain shortly. Metro Exodus hits 100.43. Hitman hits nearly 160 frames per second. And Final Fantasy nearly hits 18,000. Black Myth Wukong again hits 119. I'll see how well it does against CL30. I'm really curious because I have a feeling it could do even better. But anyway, now I gotta say with Black Ops 6, more than likely has an issue. I believe there's a VRAM leak. And I could talk on and on about it, but that's not what you're here for. You're not here for the theory of why Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is so bad, but I did notice a memory leak in it when I was playing Black Ops. There is a serious problem with the game itself, and I can screenshot it and I will share it with you guys to show you exactly what I mean. But it does not occur to any of the other games. It is definitely not any of the components, I can say for sure, because everything is working stable and there is no freezing. The 9800X3D's temperatures have been great. The highest I've been able to really push it after undervolting it was up to about 84 to 85 degrees at the most. And now during gaming, you don't expect the temperatures to even really hit the 70s too often. It's either in between the 60s and the high 60s, I can say. The cooler combination with the ASUS Ryujin 3 has been excellent. Been really happy with the 9800X3D. Temperatures wise, it's been great. It doesn't feel like a friggin' heater in the house, especially compared to the 7950X3D. Fanman guys, if you know anybody else who is interested in doing a PC build just like this, make sure you share this video with them. If you're interested in any of the components, make sure to check down in the description box down below. If not part of the big wonderful Fanman, make sure you go down and hit the subscribe button for more, and don't forget to hit the notification bell for all the newest updates. Make sure you follow my X handle right here, as it is the same as my TikTok and IG as well. And please do not forget to join the $50 Visa gift card giveaway. you may be that one lucky winner out there that wins it. I really want to thank you. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Chris Mizo signing out.